communism and the Olympics do not go together for me.
So the Olympic Committee, who makes that decision, of course, they were in trouble a few years ago for accepting bribes or something about where they choose for the Olympics to go. So I do not disagree with that it shouldn't have been in a country that has slave labor or a communist country anyway. But are we being traitors for watching the Olympics? Welcome into Alabama Unfiltered. I am one of your hosts, Scott Beeson. Allison Sinclair is with me. Amy Beth Shaver is also with me. We've got a big show for you today. You don't want to miss it. But don't forget you can see this podcast at all the regular places. Please make sure you give us a 5-star review. But this week up on the show, we got things that you might have missed in Alabama. And then we have a little bit of how many traitors can be in one Olympics? And also, we want to know, are the Christians responsible for all the COVID shutdowns and all the things that we have had to deal with for the last 2 years? Those are the big questions. So, Allison, are you starting on what we missed? What did we miss?
Yeah, well, I'm calling this segment in case you missed it, because a lot happens in Alabama and around the world and the country, just even in a week. So
yeah, but that's because none of us read the old newspapers anymore. So because there's not real news, it's just the news they want us to know. Well, so we miss a lot.
I think it's just we have so much coming at us so quickly. So my first story is very important. It's a follow-up story to something we touched on maybe 2 weeks ago. Y'all remember me talking about Will Ainsworth?
Yes.
And he was posting dying lions and talking about
the lieutenant governor of the state.
Yes. Thank you.
Old lions used to be really
lions.
tough, and then you eventually get old and you look like Scar off the Disney thing. And the hyenas come and eat you.
That's exactly it.
Okay.
And everybody was kind of like wide-eyed, like, who are we talking about? And remember, then I got a text poll about, would you vote for Ainsworth or Ivy? And so everybody was like gearing up for Ivy to run for Ainsworth to run for governor.
Right.
Never happened.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, I titled this one, Will Ainsworth Hearts Hey Ivy, because they're back together. On his Facebook page.
Sweet.
He attended her campaign kickoff at Lloyd's.
I'm sorry. Wait. At Lloyd's?
What's
the
wrong with
meet and
Lloyd's?
three?
At Lloyd's on 280. The meet and three.
That used to be the only thing anyone knew on
It
280.
did.
Before there was a 280.
Lloyd's. I remember going out to the Chelsea.
I used to
Lloyd's.
think you
Did
had to
you go out
drive
there?
like to. Was there a one at Chelsea?
I'm
Are
sorry.
you sure
A
it's
moment
not
in
just...
Alabama history. No.
Okay.
Please.
There
no.
were two?
There was one Lloyd's, and you drove almost out to Chelsea to go to Lloyd's to get your meet and
not
three.
Perception?
And then,
I think it's in the same place. It just seemed like you had driven to Chelsea.
I lived on 119. I grew up on 119.
Okay, all right.
So you had
I'll
to drive
give you a
out there, and it was
credit.
super fancy when they moved, and they're on 280
Really?
right now. Yeah, because we went there
no
after
idea.
church for cheeseburgers on their like melamine plates with their good French fries. And then they, tiptoed into the whole like barbecue, which was good, and veggies. Yeah, it was a thing. It was a whole thing.
So
like
when
that's
I
where
was
you
little,
went after church.
and I thought, okay, because we were coming from Gardendale, and I thought,
That
man,
was
we
like
are
an hour.
driving to the Gulf Coast to go to this
You
restaurant.
are.
And so it really was further out there.
It was.
Wasn't that I got
You weren't
bigger,
imagining-
and it was
no.
okay. All
It
right,
was
so I
real.
feel
It
better
was on old
because my
280.
perception
Yeah.
was we're never going to get to this
Old
place.
280.
Do you remember that?
No, I don't remember, but I know where old 280 is. And
There is an old 280.
No.
It's not all the same.
No,
It's not.
I try to avoid that part of the world.
Why? What did it ever
Because
do
there's
to you?
50 million people in like 3 square miles, and y'all all have to drive at the same time. That's my problem
You
with
know what?
280.
It's because we have such good things by us.
Oh, well, I guess so. Because you just
Anyway, I'm sorry. So you're telling me that Governor Ivy had a kickoff at Lloyd's.
that's where I would want to have it. I mean, if it's got good food, that's a good call.
Does it?
apparently,
But maybe that's the only place Kay remembers. She's like, 280, Birmingham, that place at Lloyd's.
I thought it was a little
way back.
random, but I mean, I went with it. Somebody said I've actually never been there. Maybe we should take a field trip.
Field trip. Tasting
You've
field
never
trip.
been to Lloyd's?
Never, and I live
Don't you
right by
live
there.
down there?
Allison, we're going
Right.
to Lloyd's,
Well,
everyone.
apparently, you
it's
have
going
to
to be
go
our first field trip.
just for the
Mark
mac
it.
and cheese.
It's really good.
Is
I
it
mean,
in
it
a
was.
bucket?
It was in the old days. I don't know. I don't even know exactly where it was. I thought it was way down by Chelsea. And then
We'll
they
have to have
moved.
pie.
I mean, it is good, but it is
Sweet
kind of
tea.
weird
And
that
sweet tea.
she
So
decided to do that there.
Well, okay. So she kicks off her campaign, and Will is one of the speakers, and he posts on his Facebook page. Under Governor Ivey, Alabama enjoys record low unemployment, record high education spending. But we're ranked number 50. I mean,
wait.
maybe
He-
52.
He really didn't brag on record high spending, did he?
Yeah,
Yeah.
record high classroom spending, which is true.
Yeah.
But we're going
we do.
backwards.
We spend more than we ever have.
And then the nation's strongest economy, the toughest pro-life law, and a state government guided by Christian conservative values. I was proud to speak at her campaign kickoff and offer my support. And so this is just 2 weeks after he was talking about dismembering and eating the dying lion. And so I don't know what's going on. I mean, I guess this is politics in Alabama. I'm guessing he does want to run sometime.
Absolutely.
We'll see what happens.
He wants to run for governor.
Yeah.
Because think about it. Kay Ivey gets a second term. If that's what the people of Alabama decide. She will then be term limited out. That's her 2 terms as governor, 2 full terms. And then it's wide open for who is governor. But if someone upsets Kay Ivey, then you've got a governor running for re-election. Ainsworth has served his 2 terms as the lieutenant governor, and where does he go?
Yeah, he is.
So
Excellent
I mean,
point.
there's a lot of strategy involved. I'm not opposed to it. I understand it completely, but that's got to be what is happening.
I kind of wish Will Ainsworth, I think he has a lot of potential.
He does. He believes right 95% of the time, and he might be the guy next time.
Here's the situation. I think that poll must have not come back as delightful as he wished it would have, because I think a lot of parents are still, and we'll get into this later today, upset that at the beginning of the COVID fight, he kind of sat back and he could have done something and he didn't. And mama bears remember when you don't help our kids. And so I like Will. I think that he is a strong-minded person. I think he has a lot to offer, but I also think he needs to decide if he is going to be who he's going to be for. But I really do. I like him. I know his parents and did some work with his mom years ago. Have a lot of respect for them. However, that is probably one of the reasons why that poll didn't come back the way that he thought it would. It's because we still remember. We all remember.
Didn't he? Wasn't he against the gas tax, Kay Ivey's big gas tax that she didn't tell anybody about when she was running? Before he decided to be for it, he was against it before he was for it.
Right.
It's those kinds of things. And I understand the power structure and what happens, and people come alongside and say, hey, you're the next one.
Yes.
You just sit back, do right, support the plan, and
Play the game.
and then we'll be all for you. The problem is they may or may not be.
Right.
That's the way it works. They just need you today.
You're taking the risk.
And hopefully Will is reading the tea leaves right. But sometimes people go along with the establishment and they get burned so much along the way that they are now the old lion that gets eaten by the next greatest thing. Because the establishment wants a person they can fully depend on.
Right.
And Will doesn't believe all the things they believe. So I'm just trying to give him good advice that says, be careful with whoever you're playing with, because if they find a complete yes man, they'll decide you get fed to the hyenas.
That's right.
I think he's torn right now, and it could go either way. And people do forget that as lieutenant governor, he has maybe more power than, I don't know, more than the governor. But he controls what goes on the floor
You can do a lot. They don't have near the power they used to.
Well,
Because once the Republicans took over, the senators were like, I'm a senator. Are you? No, they don't have near the power they did back when Siegelman was lieutenant governor. It's just not the same.
well, it's just an interesting storyline to watch.
No, it is.
And
And I had missed it.
Yeah, in case you missed it.
Yes.
So I'm rooting for Will.
Yeah.
I really want him to
Yes.
come through. I think if he's going to establish himself as a strong leader, now is the time. So
There's a lot of
see what
people.
happens.
I know people have contacted me, people close to me who believe he is the guy who will actually do what all these governors have had the opportunity to do
and haven't.
and haven't. I mean,
Yeah.
going back to Bob Riley, whoever, they just have not. They've had everything right there for him, and they haven't. I mean, think about Kay Ivey. Kay Ivey has been a Republican governor with super majorities in the House and Senate, and that list that Will puts the best. I mean, that's what we've got.
Yeah.
We spend more. We have gas taxes.
We shut churches down.
Every state claims that they have the best economy. Every red state does. So it's all those things.
You either want to be liked or you want to be a leader.
Ding, ding, ding.
They're not
ding,
the
ding.
same thing.
Ding, ding.
Interesting.
Ding. Yeah. So that's something that's shaping up to be interesting. And likewise is this U.S. Senate race in Alabama. I came across this Twitter. Let me just say, I do not know the person that wrote this, but I think it's very much on point. His name is Chris Peaks. Anybody heard that name?
No.
He has a blog called Alabama Political Contributor. Okay, and basically he's talking about why can't Katie Britt and Mo Brooks gain traction? And it is very interesting because if you look at it, it is almost a dead heat 3-way tie.
I think there might be some stretching there, but we'll use
no,
it.
I mean,
Okay.
they move around in the polls depending on where you look, and like Katie Britt is absolutely backed by Washington, backed by
absolutely
lobbyists. She has the most money.
She's the establishment candidate. She's the Republican Party candidate, the Mitch McConnell-esque candidate.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Now she might say she's not, but she is. Period. She is.
Well, and she has DC experience and the backing of DC, and she is known, he says, the entrenched Washington insiders. And then there's Mo Brooks, who has President Trump's endorsement, which I don't know where that stands today. I think it's kind of waning in its power, but he does have that endorsement. But like neither one of them can really pull ahead. And then you have Mike Durant, who's this outsider that's kind of just sitting, and it does feel like he talks about, he's like every day it seems like Mike Durant just kind of edges up, and so it's just, we have 3 very, very different candidates,
right,
coming from very, very different angles. At the
did he have the negative angle on Mike Durant, or was it an article that was very positive Mike Durant? Was it an article that's designed to, hey, don't forget the third guy. Yeah, he's an outsider. No, that's usually what you say when you're trying to support.
So it definitely was like I'm guessing he's a Mike Durant fan, but it got me thinking that it is interesting in this with Mo that has a congressional district that knows him and loves him. And I know it's hard to get your name out around the state, but he's pretty well known. I mean, he's fairly well known,
but people really don't know politicians like Will Ainsworth. I think if you ran a poll, part of his poll probably was that people aren't. I mean, they voted for him last time and don't remember they voted for him. It is very difficult to have high name ID. A great example was a few years back. Del Marsh, president of the Senate, president pro tem of the Senate, was in a very contentious Senate race out I-20. And I forgot, he spent like $1 million. The person against him spent like $1 million. They were on ads after ads after ads after ads. Like 6 months later, there was a special election of some kind, or less than a year, and his name ID was like 3.
Yeah.
In the area that they had spent millions of dollars. So regular people just don't pay attention to who these people are, and they wait till about the last couple of weeks, wouldn't you think?
I think they do wait till the last couple of weeks. I mean, it's kind of like doing a dinner party or you're hosting an event. We've all done this before. You're not going to give your RSVP until at least 3 days before. You're lucky if you get 5, right? I mean, have you not, like I've planned events before and it's about 300 people coming and you're thinking, great, no one's coming. And then the week before they flood in, and then 3 days before, and then the day of you get like 20%. Right. They're like, oh, I forgot, which is always me. So I completely understand that.
So you feed them anyway.
I feed them anyway because I'm like, look, it's me. Please feed me, but times 20. But I think the other thing about name ID is a very good point is we remember in the year, but even more what we remember is we remember the Ron DeSantis's of the world. We remember the governor of Texas. We remember the people who stand out and are willing to take punches for us, but also punch right back. Right. And so because we have a few sterling examples, but none in the state of Alabama, as independent-minded as we are, but also as Republican as we are, we don't have our Ron DeSantis. And so if any one of them ends up being that Ron DeSantis, no matter how long Mo's been there, I mean, my husband grew up in his district, I have friends that are really good friends with Katie Britt. Like, I don't know Mike Durant at all.
Right.
I'm sure all good people, but we need somebody to stand up and be our Ron DeSantis in each of these races. And that's how they're going to distinguish themselves. And that's how they're going to make a difference.
Well, I think that's why Mo is so liked in his district.
Yes.
Even though Washington, D.C. hates him,
Right.
McConnell hates him. I mean, that's one of the reasons they ran him, scorched earth him
Right.
when he ran for United States Senate last time. He was the guy to have to get rid of, and the establishment did get rid of him. So but that, doesn't necessarily help him around the state. I do think when it comes to name ID, someone was asking me about this last week. I think the way someone actually gains real name ID, they have to have done something that somebody tells someone else about. It's not enough for me to hear news that says K-Ivy, K-Ivy, K-Ivy. That's fine. I've got it in the back of my mind somewhere. But until I say, hey, did you hear what Ron DeSantis said? And I tell you that story, it requires me to remember it and then tell you about him or her or whoever. And like you're saying, we don't have anybody doing anything that really makes us energized about that person. I think that's how you make name ID stick. And sometimes for the negative.
I think this election cycle is going to be very interesting because we as America are very different than we were in 2020. And so what maybe normally people would just pay attention to the quick headline, Mike Durant this, Mo Brooks that. I'm hoping that people are really digging in and looking past the headlines. And I think that grassroots word of mouth advertising is going to translate way more than millions of dollars spent.
I agree.
So it's shaping up to be super interesting and one to watch.
It's weird how it's all happening, and that Katie Britt is the establishment candidate. Does she get any more than that 30, 35, 20, there's an establishment number, and that's what they usually get. They get, they get enough to make it into the runoff, maybe be leading into a runoff. Then you got Mo Brooks, who has the conservative side. And then Durant, who's kind of picking up all the people who are like, well, I don't like any, I'm going to be for somebody new, but they really don't even know necessarily.
That's what this is.
I could be that person.
So,
right.
Is your name Chris?
Well, one of my pen names.
Y'all don't look alike at all. But it's I think it's great to have such a variety of candidates.
Absolutely.
And at the end of the day, we will rally behind our conservative candidate, and whoever gets up in Washington, we will have to work with. We can't turn on each other at
No, I don't think we will this time.
No, we can't.
I hope not.
But
it's a great word.
Isn't it the establishment that really turns on the conservatives? The
Feels like it.
The conservatives vote for John McCain. The conservatives vote for Mitt Romney. The conservatives still, vote for Donald Trump. But when the conservatives pick a Donald Trump because they say, hey, okay, well, we'll give him a shot, it's the establishment that says no. When the conservatives say, hey, look, hey, you only gave us two choices, Luther Strange or Roy Moore, I think it was the establishment that said, oh, no, we'll elect a Democrat. It was Katie Britt's boss.
Yeah.
And wasn't she in the office when they were managing the whole blow up the Republicans and get...
You're talking about when we elected Doug Jones, correct? Yes. So they were saying we can't, Shelby did kind of...
he's responsible.
Spearheaded, and she was in the office, his office when they did that.
You probably fought him tooth and nail, though, don't you think?
I mean,
we'll have to ask her. Maybe
she'll...
Okay, maybe she'll come on. We'll ask how it went.
We'll ask her.
How those fights went.
Because I think...
You can't control him.
No,
so
you
it's hard
can't.
to blame her for that.
I agree.
But it was because they spearheaded that write-in campaign, and that's how we got Doug Jones, which eventually led to us not repealing Obamacare because of Mike Kelly in Arizona. It's a whole
and how
big thing.
how many other things did we never had to do, regardless of what people thought theoretically, hypothetically about Judge Roy Moore. He was going to vote right over and over and over.
It's a tough
and we could have got someone new if
I almost
something
got
turned
into
out.
fisticuffs about that.
But that's the thing. I mean, that was the two choices: Doug Jones and Roy Moore. Which one of them is
Less
ideologically on our side? Whether whether we have all these other issues or not.
Maybe we just need to put forth better candidates.
Well, that's possible
But
too.
we're working on it.
Mo Brooks ran,
Again,
but he got beat before the runoff. Before the runoff, yeah.
it's a new world, though.
Okay.
It is.
I'm hopeful.
All right.
And we'll see. So my last, in case you missed it, and this is a big one because we talked about, if you go back and listen to last week's podcast, we talked about parallel societies and how this is going to hash out. And is it a necessity at this point? Have y'all heard that Mike Lindell's bank canceled him? He had 9 accounts.
I
at this
did hear
bank,
that.
And it wasn't for any other reason, quote, he's a reputation risk. Think about that.
Lord.
I mean, I'm probably a reputation risk in lots of places.
I would.
You are for sure.
Oh, why would you want to be mean to me like that?
She's too.
She's
actually,
so nice. People
I
are
was gonna
like,
say,
please
she's
bring
too
your money here. Can we put
Probably
you?
not.
No, y'all will both be like, they
So,
want to put you on
so a
commercials.
social credit score, great.
Yeah, that's basically
Awesome.
what's coming. And as of February 18th, he can no longer bank at this Minnesota bank. I think I said that right. Minnesota.
Didn't the
Yes,
bank say
Minnesota Bank and
something?
Trust.
Didn't the bank say something like,
Way
well,
to
you
go,
know,
Minnesota.
the FBI might be poking around or come calling around or something? Didn't they say
No,
something
he
about the
said-
federal government?
Okay, so he said this is the Tom Cardle,
Okay.
a senior vice president at Minnesota Bank and Trust. This is what he's heard saying in a voice recording.
Okay.
But what if somebody came in and said, you know what? We're going to subpoena all of his account records and this and that, and we make the news.
Oh, my stars.
That is just a weak leader. He needs to
It's
go.
very weak.
Right.
And
That's embarrassing.
That to me is un-American. Like, he's not funneling AK-47s into the country. He's not funneling it's not a.
He's not running a
he's
criminal
selling
enterprise.
Pillows
And blankets and socks.
and he loves Jesus.
comfort
Right.
items.
Ugh.
And he has a picture of a lion behind his head in his commercials.
Hey, I hear his
But a-
towels
but
are
a-
amazing.
a-
You know
really?
what?
Yeah.
We should probably get some.
I just think that's so sad. Like, to
It
me,
is.
that is where we are. And which, and I want to look at the left and be like, do you realize, okay, if Minnesota Bank and Trust, Tom, had been a staunch conservative, well, you realize maybe we can start canceling the other side
That's
because they went to a protest that we didn't agree with. Like, this is a very slippery slope.
It is. It goes both ways. And I think when you're in the middle of it and you're having fun, we're going to go cancel them and cancel this and
Right.
eliminate this. They never stop to think it goes both ways. Without fail, that is the way life works.
Would you keep your bank account there if you had one?
Out. I'm out.
You're out?
I'm
What
out.
about you?
You're fired.
No,
The
I'm
bank.
done. That's how we vote. That is our vote for who we agree with, our money, our time, our energy. You got to go. I'm glad I don't live in Minnesota.
If these businesses want to pick sides, isn't it okay for all of us consumers to pick sides?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
I mean,
We better.
you gotta think that bank. Wouldn't it have been better for them to say, "Look, we're just a bank, and we want everybody's money,
That's
and just
right.
do that ad."
Yeah, I would think so. But they obviously are just bowing to investors
Sure.
who are like, ooh, he sells Jesus pillows. Ooh, we can't, like snowflakes.
He thinks Joe Biden stole the election.
But you know what else I love about that?
Here's the beauty. I'm not sure Joe stole the election. Somebody stole it for Joe.
He doesn't know what's
well,
happening.
and don't you love that when they cancel, they tell on themselves? I mean, that's the irony of it all. Is they're not wise enough to realize they are telling all of us we're terrified of this man and of his power and of what he represents. So much so that we're going to cancel him. Oh my goodness. Like what is that? Go ahead and just like megaphone, that guy's powerful.
Right,
Yeah.
and we're wimps.
And totally wins.
That is just bad.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
go home and tell your wife
lame.
and kids, and we got rid of Mike Lindell.
I'm a
and
strong man now.
And the kids like, isn't that the guy that sells the pillows?
that
Like,
you're sleeping on, Dad?
who wants
Yeah,
like everybody to go
seriously.
to heaven? and stuff?
I mean, he probably has.
I
He's
got you
probably
one for Christmas.
He's burning all of his pillows from Mike Lindell right now.
God,
Destroy
Or
the
sprinkle them in the
evidence.
backyard because there's so much snow in Minnesota.
Minnesota.
that is.
Is that not
that's
sad?
insane. I've always thought Minnesota and Wisconsin, are they the same place?
They're
It's
the
like
same place because they
state.
talk like this.
That's because their nose is always clogged up because it's cold.
They are, and they never get out of their car.
The car.
And their
And
mask
their-
is on.
their mask is on all the time.
Put all my pillows
Can you
in the
imagine
boat.
if you married somebody from that area? I'd be like, I'm so sorry. You're going to have to go to language class I can't listen to that accent.
But they
all the
say
time.
that
I'm
about
sorry.
us.
They do because I think we're stupid.
They're like, y'all
Wear
down
no
there.
shoes.
They
No, I
think
bet
we're
we sound.
so dumb. It's fine. We do.
I
But if
don't
it-
want them to know any different.
fine.
They'll move down here.
Fine.
Let them stay.
Whatever.
Don't
I don't
leave them.
want to
hope-
have that much snow on the
No.
ground.
Tell
No.
Tom Cardell to stay in Minnesota.
Bye,
Yeah,
Tom.
that's his name.
You're fired, Tom.
Y'all are in rare form today.
It's because you gave us sugar
was-
before the
The sweet
No
tart
more
ropes
candy
were
for
like,
y'all.
every time, please.
Okay, the next thing. How many traders can be in one Olympics? And the reason I asked that is starting from the overarching question. The Olympics are almost over, so I wanted to get to this question. There are so many people call in my radio show, people I've talked to who said, I'm not watching the Olympics because it's being hosted by the communists and they have slaves. They have slave labor. And I'm like, wait a minute, but you buy stuff from the communists with slave labor all the time.
That hurts a little bit right
yeah,
there.
I know. That was kind of mean. Exactly.
Oh.
But so what are we supposed to do? I love the Olympics. I feel for the athletes. I think when America has boycotted Olympics before, who did it help? It sure didn't help the athletes who spent their whole entire life waiting for this one set of 2 or 3 weeks, and a bunch of politicians get to go, well, I was part of a boycott. What did you do? You didn't do anything. So if we had boycotted the Olympics, what would that have changed in the trajectory of the world? Should we be watching it? Should we not be watching it? Allison, where are you?
Can you see the wheels spinning?
You're spinning because you haven't watched it and you're not even thinking about it.
When I say I haven't watched one moment, I have not watched one
None-
moment.
nothing?
None. And it wasn't
There's
even
some
purposeful.
great events.
No, like the world is on fire.
Yes.
I don't have time to watch figure skating. So it's more just like I haven't watched it. But when I heard we were going to talk about this, I mean, my thing is, what is the Olympics? The Olympics is community. It's supposed to be the best of the best, where you come together and you celebrate your fastest and your strongest and your brightest and your country. And it's not that anymore. And to me, it is antithetical to what the Olympics are to be hosting it in a communist country. I mean, communism and the Olympics do not go together for me.
So the Olympic Committee, who makes that decision, of course, they were in trouble a few years ago for accepting bribes or something about where they choose for the Olympics to go. So I do not disagree with that it shouldn't have been in a country that has slave labor or a communist country anyway. But are we being traitors for watching the Olympics? Am I being a traitor for watching the Olympics? Or should I be making this statement, voting with my feet or whatever, and not watching it?
That's a really good question.
I think that's a personal conviction that you have to.
He doesn't
It's
like
kind
that.
of like we. What
That's what
did
you
you
say
watch
when
the
you don't want to
Super Bowl?
answer. I did, and I felt cruddy for that
I
because I
know.
was supporting social justice and all the
We had
ridiculous
a
stuff
Super
the
Bowl
NFL.
party.
Oh,
and
well,
I
you
got really judged
She
for
did
that.
Really?
not invite us to her Super Bowl party.
Yeah, I noticed.
By the way,
I'm glad you thought of that because I don't remember that invitation
I don't either.
All right, next time.
Okay.
No, we're not watching it again.
You're done?
Okay,
No
all right.
more social
Finish.
justice, rah-rah?
Well, no,
parties?
I did. I mean,
Did
so
y'all dance while the halftime was going on? Did you cheer more
It
for
was
Eminem than you
so
did all the
good.
other singers? Because you know that's a
It was-
controversy too, right? Did you know that?
No, I just love Dr. Dre. I thought he was, and
I
I'm
think
a
Dr.
huge
Dre's
Snoop
phenomenal.
Dogg fan
I
too.
do. I can't lie. He's like the GOAT.
And Kendrick Lamar was
Awful.
awful.
He was terrible.
How do y'all know who these people are? I only knew Eminem, and I didn't know you. I thought it was you spelled it
I
like you do the candy.
appreciated that Eminem bleeped out, I think, some of the words, but the rap was awesome. And I think Dr. Dre literally is
Eminem
amazing.
now looks like an old regular guy.
He does, but by the way, why did he do the
thought he
like
looked
whole
really
kneeling
good.
thing?
Was
But
he kneeling for the guy who
I don't
died?
know. I
It
don't
was-
know.
Tupac?
it was- It was
I hope
Tim
it was for
Tebow.
Tupac.
He did that
He
for
was-
Tim Tebow?
Yeah, that's what I'm claiming.
Okay, you're going with
That's
that.
a joke.
So it wasn't.
Yeah.
Well, it could be because he's not saying. It's either he took a knee to be all colon Kaepernicky. You know why I say colon, right? Because he's full of it. You got
I was
that?
like, you really just mispronounced that.
No, I
mispronounced that.
purposefully did it.
Okay.
Karen.
Sorry. He mispronounced the name. Give me that sweet tart
Or,
rope.
or it was for the Tupac that passed away. So it might be.
No.
Tim
I
Tebow.
think it was Colin Kaepernick.
Do you?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah, because apparently
some of
there's-
the people out there were saying no, it was because he was singing the Tupac thing, and it was
let me
It
just
was-
say this, and then we got to get back to the Olympics. But so Tupac's song "All Eyes on Me" came out on February 13th of 1996.
Okay.
Okay, go senior in high school, and I remember that. Okay, Super Bowl was February 13th.
Mm-hmm. See?
Okay,
See?
I really thought Tupac was coming back.
Did you really?
And then we didn't even get the hologram. We just got
So you're-
upside
so
down
So you're
50
sure that Eminem wasn't doing that for Tupac?
I don't know.
You
Either
sure?
way,
On the same
that's okay.
day? See, it's a
No,
great
we are-
story.
Maybe he did. So,
So you
I don't know
gave
how
the
like that-
you gave the how you feel is how you personally feel about
I
it
don't
answer.
know.
So
I
I'm
really-
gonna
I
move.
really
I'm
do.
moving on.
no, don't move on. I really, my thing is where it gets really deep is like, have you read about, and I printed this out. Have you read about Eileen Gu?
Yes.
Okay.
That's my next set of questions on who's
Oh.
the traitor.
The
Okay.
Amy Beth Shaver?
genocide Barbie?
Oh, I haven't seen that one yet.
That's the name they gave
Amy
her.
Beth.
Oh,
What,
that's terrible.
What do you think about just watching it? Traitor or not traitor?
I think that I have an athlete in my family, so I feel for the athletes.
Mhm.
Have I watched the Olympics? Only by accident when it was on
Shame.
mono bobbing, bobsledding,
That's
one
kinda
person.
cool.
It was an accident. I am very conflicted about it being in China. It's been in China several times over the last couple of years, so we can recognize the hold that they have over the Olympic Committee in a lot of countries.
Yeah, they're bribing people with
And
our
they're
money.
bribing people. So here, if I were the Olympic Planning Committee, and we would go hold it on the Canadian border, and we'd really get people fired up about the Olympics, and everybody would watch. Why is that so
We
ridiculous?
make like ski
We can't do
slopes
anything
out
on
of
the border.
truckers.
We would make
The-
ski
the
slopes,
semi-
but that's where the community is right now. Is we're on the border and we're saying we are for freedom. So why don't we next time choose Canada and like go there and do it? But that it is in China, that it somehow supports the Uyghurs and which is awful,
Yeah.
is terrible. However, I also feel for the athletes because they can't help where the Olympics were picked to be held. That's not
Right.
in their purview. They're going to do their best. So then I'm like, go USA.
Right.
Win at all
USA.
cost.
I'm with you. That's where I am on that is, if we're going to take a stand against China or whatever, then let's absolutely do it. Let's stop buying their goods. Let's stop letting them have all our companies. Let's bring back the social justice companies who want to go do business in China and then turn around and sell their stuff back to us here at monster profits.
Right.
Let's actually do something.
Right.
Let's have those tariffs. But for some of our elected officials and people to say, oh no, you need to go sacrifice your Olympic dream and it's not going to cost me anything. I always get bothered by people who are willing for someone else to go make the sacrifice.
Well, to challenge you,
Okay.
sometimes these things need to be started by the people. And we've seen that happen in Canada, where the people take a stand and the government reacts. So if you continue to watch the Olympics,
Then I might be supporting.
then you're
communist
enabling
slavery and the Uyghurs.
America to just keep doing business with China.
Maybe. See? Now I feel traitorous.
Yes.
Okay, so here's the next
All
one.
All right.
An athlete who's an American citizen. Now, there's two different versions. There's the Chinese hockey players. Have you heard this one? So American citizens, not maybe the best, super best hockey players. So they can't play in the NHL, but they're really, really good. China invites them over to play in the Chinese hockey leagues. So they go over there, they're getting paid, they can, and then China comes along and says, "Hey, y'all want to be our hockey team because we're not really good at hockey. You get to play in the Olympics. You want to play in the Olympics for us?" Do you tell that person, "Oh no, you're a traitor because you're going to play against America," except America's going to beat you like 8-0, which I think is what actually happened. So are they traitors? And then we'll get to the third version, which is
Genocide Barbie.
Yeah, which is the worst version. So hockey players.
Oh, wow.
If you get a chance, your son, maybe he's not playing in the NBA, he goes plays overseas, and then China says, "Hey, you want to play for us? You
My
can't
answer-
play on the American team because you might not make it, but do you want to play in the Olympics?"
You're a traitor.
Okay, traitor.
Yeah, I would say no.
Traitor.
It's a hard pass. For
Is it
me.
because it's the Chinese? Would you
Yes,
let them play for Bolivia?
Yes.
You would.
Yes.
Okay.
But it's a hard pass for me if it's China.
Oh, okay. But for another country, Canada. I mean, nobody's afraid of Canada, are they?
No, nobody's afraid of Canada.
No.
But I think you're right. I mean, I think it happens all the time where we're going to play in different leagues across the world.
Right.
And you have an opportunity to play for another country.
Right.
But it's China.
Okay. So it depends on kind of on the country. Because there was a girl that ended up doing snowboard or something for some country that she's like the only athlete.
Right. Yes.
And she's terrible. Well, I mean, she's not terrible. I mean, she's better than I would be. But she didn't play. She was like in last or whatever. But she got to be in the Olympics. And I'm not mad at her.
Right.
But I am slightly upset for the folks who are in the Chinese. Second or third trader question.
Okay.
The young man who wins the figure skating gold, who, by the way, I probably shouldn't say it this way, but his figure skating routine was very manly.
Okay.
We'll just put it that way. And he's like the best. Asian descent, apparently Chinese descent. And the Chinese people on their social media are ripping him.
Why?
Because he's a traitor to China. Because his family's from China, but he's an American. And he won the gold medal. So there's this whole, hey, you're Chinese. You are competing for America, which is a white country. I didn't even know that those kind of debates happened internationally, but apparently they do. Time out.
Time out. Rewind. His family's in China, but
no,
he's
his family's from China.
Okay, so they're citizens in America now. Or he
they
was
may not be
born in
citizens, but
America.
he's a citizen. They are Americans.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So they see him as a traitor. But America's a melting pot. We have people from everywhere. So how did he get to be a Chinese traitor when his family's not from there?
I mean, am I wrong? I mean, so they've invited Americans to play on their hockey team, but
yes, but real
you can't
Americans
be from there and skate for us
because it's a communist country.
I mean, what?
That's the whole point,
right? I mean,
maybe they're just mad that they got away.
USA, I'm like, yes,
it's not fair. You're an American. Maybe.
I don't know.
Okay, here. I mean, I have an adopted Chinese daughter.
Okay.
What happens if she wants to go? I mean, like.
And she wins the gold medal. She's a traitor, apparently. So now we've got, how many sets of traitor? Now, this is the one that I think is going to get you. And what is our young lady's name again? Gu, last name?
Her name is Eileen Gu, a.k.a. Genocide Barbie is what they've given her the name of. Yes.
Do we call her that or does she call her that?
Well, I don't know. She's
an American citizen from California, I think.
San Francisco, I think.
Yes, and she's a snowboarder, skier, snowboarder, I think.
One of her parents is of Chinese descent.
Yes, I think her mom is.
Okay.
And so she goes to be on the, now like she's one of the best in the world. She won a gold medal, I think.
She relinquished her American passport and her citizenship to compete.
Now, I thought the last time they asked her was she didn't really answer the question on the passports.
Oh, well, I thought like once you did
or
that.
on the citizenship.
We need to do some research on that.
Now, I don't think there is an answer to that because there's not a dual citizenship between China and the United States. There's not one of those kind of things.
Well,
so people have asked her
name.
Really?
She's now Gu Ailing. Okay, so she now has a Chinese name because in China they put their last name first. Okay.
Okay.
So she's changed her name, but the ironic thing, I don't want to cut you off, but I do have a funny story because I actually read that down. Okay, right. So she's in China and she's like Genocide Barbie, and she's basically renounced her American heritage.
And she says she's bringing the world together too. By the way, it's a small world playing in the background.
Yes,
I'm going to be an American, but be for China.
Okay,
right.
She doesn't. Sure. She can't. Well, I can't spell Uyghur, so I can't say that. She knows. She probably knows nothing. But go ahead.
So she's in China, and she is on Instagram in China, posting about the Olympics or whatever. Okay, well, if you go to China, like when we went to China, you have to get a virtual private network because to be on a lot of social media, like when you're in China, you can't post on Facebook, you can't post on Instagram unless you have this VPN service, which basically makes you invisible on the internet. Okay, so she's in China. She's apparently this Chinese citizen, but she's posting on Instagram. So somebody in China was like, how are you posting on Instagram? And she says, oh, well, you can just go to the App Store and download free VPNs. Okay. Well, then she gets censored by the Chinese government because the Chinese government does not have VPNs on the App Store because VPNs are illegal in China.
Right.
And I'm like, welcome to your own worst nightmare doing. I mean, seriously. Like,
But she has no idea. That's my
Come on,
point.
Goo.
Yes.
She does not know.
She doesn't.
She doesn't know what she just gave up. Welcome to China. Communism right there.
How long do you think
No
that's
more
going to stick?
Instagram
I'm
for
serious.
her.
They'll probably let her be in her own little world for a while, don't you think? She'll have an alternate reality from all the other folks in China, and she won't even know. And
I don't know. Somebody needs to give her a briefing on how to be a communist Chinese citizen because that's not
what you
I
really
don't,
won't have.
I don't think the Chinese government's going to put up with that. I really
They may
don't.
not. After maybe they need her for the next Olympics because she is
I don't
good.
know.
It depends how far it goes. One of the questions on the citizenship and all that kind of stuff, they asked one of the hockey players,
Right.
which I'm really not super mad at them. And they asked them about the citizenship thing, and they're like, I don't think we're supposed to talk about that.
Well, let's do some research. I'm going to get back to y'all and
Yeah.
see
In
what
case you missed it.
in case you missed it next week. In case we need answers to this because, wouldn't that be ironic if just for a few slides down a slope, she gave up this great life? And that's what kills me about this generation. I don't think they understand how good they have it.
No.
Like they want to hate on capitalism and hate on America and hate on, a constitutional republic.
Right.
So you can go live in communist China.
Right.
I mean,
Drink your Starbucks,
yeah,
get on your Instagram on your iPhone,
and complain about America.
and then bash about
'Cause
being
my life is
oppressed
so
and capitalism
hard.
so bad. Right. Absolutely.
And she's a model. Genocide Barbie is a model, and she's been on like the cover of Vogue and all these things. And I'm like, oh
She's
my
not
God.
even going to live a normal life then. I mean, because that is worshipped as in any culture, if that's what you are.
until she disappears.
Listen, should we talk about that? No, we're not.
Well, she can't
The
even ask for
Chinese tennis
directions.
star.
She was getting in trouble with the Chinese people because they were upset with her for not knowing Mandarin.
Oh my.
And they're like, your mom is Chinese. You should know Mandarin. I'm like, she's from California, for goodness sakes.
She's got a rude awakening coming.
It's going to be
She
rough.
really does.
So, when she gets old, maybe they'll let her live in her own little Barbie world until she's no longer
I think
important.
there's a song about that.
There's a Barbie world song?
Yes.
You actually
How do
just
y'all
sang
know
a
these
song.
things?
Because we have girls.
Oh,
And Merritt may have not been into it,
She
but
might not have.
we, yeah. I mean, there's a Barbie song.
can you do that again?
No, I can't believe I just did that for real.
All
Caught
right.
myself.
So, are we going to do? We're already at our 40-minute mark. Do we want to delve into whether or not Christians are responsible? There's a very good argument to be made that it's the Christians' fault that we've had COVID Hades for the last couple of years. Or do you want to do that next week, ladies?
Can we do it in 15 minutes?
I think we can do it.
Let's
Okay.
do it.
All right, let's start it. So, is it the Christians' fault?
All right.
Tell me what's going on. What are you really going to make the argument? You're going to blame the Christians?
Listen, I am going to ask you a question about somebody that we should know about. All right.
Okay.
Because this is the person that we got our COVID information from. Does anybody know the name Francis Collins? Do you
Yes.
know who he is?
No.
Okay. Do you know who he is?
I do.
Okay. I mean, so we remember that Francis Collins was the guy that did the Human Genome Project, and he should
Okay.
be respected and honored for that because that was an amazing breakthrough discovery, right? But if you dig into who Francis Collins is, then you begin to wonder why pastors listen to anything out of his mouth at all.
Okay.
Fauci was the medical front, and Collins was the evangelical front. He had people like Rick Warren saying, and Russell Moore specifically, he is a man that can be trusted. You can trust this guy. Rick Warren and Collins met at Davos in Switzerland at a billionaires meeting.
Okay, wait. Rick Warren, the pastor.
Rick Warren, the pastor.
From the California pastor. Is that the, what kind of life was his little book?
The purpose-driven
The
life.
Purpose-Driven life. That's right.
That's that Rick Warren.
Right. So that Rick
Okay.
Warren. So
He's at Davos
Yeah, he's
with
at
all
Davos.
the
Klaus
globalists,
Schwab,
Klaus Schwab.
and the
so
World Economic Forum.
okay.
So
okay.
there's an article that is how the federal government used evangelical leaders to spread COVID propaganda to churches.
And Francis Collins is the head of the NIH.
He was the head of the NIH.
That Francis Collins. Because when you said
This-
Francis Collins, I'm thinking, no, this is some pastor
Yes.
kind of guy, not the little kind of.
Yes.
Exactly what you would have thought.
Yes.
Exactly.
That's what they wanted us to think.
They wanted us to think that.
I'm seeing it now a little
Yeah.
bit. So you're going to have to keep
So
explaining.
what you have is Ed Stetzer, who was Wheaton College, big school up in Chicago.
Okay.
You don't know Ed Stetzer, but he's got his hands involved in anything regarding evangelicalism. Okay. He was on a podcast, he and Francis Collins, and essentially Stetzer is the executive director of the Billy Graham Center and editor-in-chief of Outreach Media Group, and he partnered with Francis Collins, okay, about COVID information. I'm serious.
Really?
Yeah. So he told pastors essentially, here is a quote from Ed Stetzer, I just tell them when you get vaccinated, post a picture and say, see, I was so thankful to be able to get vaccinated. And so Stetzer and Collins and Warren and Russell Moore and others were responsible for getting information out to pastors to get to their congregations, wear a mask. It is, quote, a life-saving device.
Okay.
Get vaccinated, and let's stop the spread. But Francis Collins, former director of the NIH, he was the evangelical head. Fauci's the medical face.
Okay.
These two are together.
Okay.
Do you remember what else Fauci and Collins did together during the whole COVID situation?
The scalping, the lab rat.
Thank you.
The what?
Okay, this is so
The scalping the lab rats.
I'll tell you. I'll read it to you.
it all goes together, I promise.
So here you go. So did anybody along the way feel like during COVID that our pastors had messaging that was awfully similar? Did
Yes.
you notice on some of the billboards
Was that the apart together? We
that
can be
it was
together
the apart
which-
together? This
Yes.
was your mask is a life-saving device. You need to get vaccinated. You need to stay home. You need to obey orders. Well, it turns out from what just a minute
If you
ago
love other people.
if you love other people, direct messaging. If you love other people, you will stay home. You will obey what they say. You will wear your mask. You will get vaccinated. You will do all these things. You'll post pictures. Didn't that messaging seem weird because it was so uniform across
Yes,
the board?
yes, and you would hear commercials for the stations I'm on run. They're Christian stations, Christians owned. So there's these commercials, and you would hear these church leaders from all across the country saying the same kind of thing that a very, very local small church is running the exact same message. And I was like, well, that's weird, but maybe it just caught on. But no, it didn't just catch on. There were people purposefully feeding this, right?
That's right. So what feels discombobulated, you think Francis Collins, wait, the NIH guy, the human genome guy? And Rick Warren, and what are they doing together? And Russell Moore used to be head of the SBC. Like, what is going on here? Well, you realize that they came up with a messaging strategy, and they together, Fauci and Collins, used the church and used pastors to get out information about COVID to their congregation. And those messages were built on lies.
Mm-hmm.
My deeper question is, if we know what Francis Collins was really about, would we have listened to anything he said? We know him as the Human Genome Project guy. That's
Right,
what he's
right,
renowned for. But how about this? He defended experimentation on fetuses obtained by abortion.
Mm-hmm.
He directed record level spending toward it. Among the NIH priorities that funded under Collins, a University of Pittsburgh experiment that involved grafting infant scalps onto rats, as well as projects that relied on the harvested organs of aborted full-term babies. Some doctors have even charged Collins with giving money to research that required extracting kidneys, ureters, and bladders from living infants. And so, pastors, I want to know, what in God's name were you listening to him for?
Well, okay. Before that, even listening to him, how did they become buddies? I'm not
Thank you.
buddies with anybody who does
Thank
that,
you.
at least that I know who's done that.
But all these pastors defend him as a as a strong Christian pillar in the community, also like science, you know, he and Fauci are science, and pro-life. I mean, he has this reputation amongst evangelical pastors of being
It's a
strong
certain wing
Christian.
of evangelical pastors, though,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Might I
But
quote
their reach is huge.
Yeah.
Tim Keller,
Okay.
Rick Warren,
I'm not surprised. Keep going.
Ed Stetzer. He's the kind of mastermind Christian publishing guy
Right.
who is with Billy Graham. He's like the grandfather of all of this, masterminding with Francis Collins. Okay. But you need to put Stetzer's name and Collins' name together and then the umbrella underneath it all. So you've got Tim Keller, Rick Warren, Wright, Ed Stetzer, all publicly lauded him as a godly brother. And so when presenting Collins to Southern Baptist, Russell Moore gushed over him as the smartest man in a book club that he attends. He also includes, according to Time magazine, such luminaries of the Christian intelligentsia like the Atlantic's Peter Wenner and the New York Times' David Brooks. They greatly admire his wisdom, expertise, and Christian humility.
Wow.
And we listened to him for our Christian messaging strategy over COVID.
Well, I
And
mean,
he
because it's
lied.
easy for us to get sucked in because they go out and tell everybody, if you're a good person, you'll do this. If you're a good Christian, you will do this.
It's the definition of love your neighbor.
That's what they would say.
It's
yeah.
disgusting.
And anything that is not truth is not Christian.
That's right.
Their truth.
Yeah, I guess they're doing their truth.
Yeah.
So how did we end up there? How did we end up listening to somebody like that? And this is what really has me fired up, is we have pastors who spend a lot of time preparing really good sermons,
Yes.
but they didn't spend enough time digging into Francis Collins. And they believed people like Rick Warren when they said he's a good guy. And
Yeah,
yet,
but that's the key,
just
isn't it?
in the fall, that's exactly right. Just in the fall, it came out. It was documented that Collins oversaw the lab rat and the baby skin. I mean, like the skin grafts.
Right.
It's horrific.
Right.
Why didn't they know or push back that if he will do this and he will say anything, why would we listen to anything out of his mouth? Is it because Rick Warren said, we'll listen to him, and Russell Moore said, oh, he's a good guy?
Don't forget Tim Keller.
And Tim Keller. I really want to know, how did we end up here not being able to push back?
But that group is kind of a fellowship. That group of pastors,
the Gospel Coalition,
yes,
and Christianity
they are
Today.
the liberal version, in my opinion, of evangelical. But what happens is, you have thousands of people. You have pastors out there who did sermons, and their whole church did Sunday school classes off Rick Warren's books, and yes, Rick Warren has said some things through the years that you're like, what? I don't understand how that works. But so it's hard for them not to say, or they just kind of buy in. And so is the question. I think the local pastors don't really even know, don't even consider that this kind of thing could happen on.
You know what's bad is the local pastors that have bought into this that I know are doubling down now.
Because we do know local pastors that did do this.
Yes.
And now they're doubling down. They're not saying like I didn't know.
No.
That's the way you.
No.
It's the way you just admit it and
no.
And
even
move
though
on.
everything has come out that a lot cloth masks. The vaccine.
CDC came out and said, we all know this. They don't work. They admitted it. But
masks don't work. Vaccines don't work.
Pastors. So we think something's like a national level and it's really not affecting us, but it is because we see it. I pass churches every day that still have the same love your neighbor, wear a mask, love your neighbor, get a vaccine. I'm like, is this 1978? Are you not aware of what's happening right now? Do you not listen to the CDC? So we are seeing the effects of a national issue that's trickled down into local areas, and we are leaving churches over pastors doubling down on the lie. And then when you push back, you're shamed for questioning them because they are the powers that be.
Right.
And so a deeper question is, what's going on in the church where we can't even ask our pastors questions like, where did you get this information?
Well, I mean, look, you've got Jesus, seems to be a special person, Son of God. who says, was it Jesus? Well, maybe not. It wasn't Jesus himself. It was God's word that said, don't forsake the assembling of the brothers. Don't stop going to church. So we basically said, well, Francis Collins says we should stop going. So, which one's really the one we were supposed to obey? Really? Because I know that's touchy for people. It's touchy for all of us because most churches said, we're going to save everybody when we'll quit.
Yeah. In this article, it has a quote. Tim Keller was in an interview with Collins, and they're talking about John MacArthur, who was the one and deserves.
Right, he took a strong stand. Absolutely.
Yeah. And Tim Keller says that John MacArthur's church that continued to meet in person despite lockdowns represented the bad and the ugly of good, bad, and ugly Christian responses to the virus.
The bad and the ugly.
Yeah. I mean, whoa.
Come on now.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I mean, and it really, it's scary to me to look and see how divisive and deceptive and how easily overtaken a lot of these pastors have been. I mean, I have been called on Facebook from a local pastor,
right,
pretty much calling me out.
Seen it with my own eyes.
Did you see that thread?
Mm-hmm.
Basically, I'm not a Christian.
For doing what?
Because, well, really, I'm an evangelical. Basically, evangelicalism is dead, and it's turned into nationalism. And if you support Trump, or if you don't wear a mask, I mean, like this is a prominent pastor.
A local
prominent pastor.
Alabama.
Absolutely.
Pastor.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I could drive you to his house right now.
Yep. And that's how divisive this has gotten over a stupid cloth mask that doesn't work and a vaccine that should be a personal decision.
Correct.
That doesn't even protect you. Right. You can still get it and spread it and everything else. And so to me, it's a real evil darkness, and it's frightening. And it is driving our churches apart. And I don't know how. This is almost like another Reformation. I don't know. It's interesting to me.
So you think the church will be better? There may be two versions of the church.
Yeah.
There'll be the liberal church, and then there'll be the church that goes by God's word and is trying to seek God's truth.
Well, I think you see a real difference in it requires humility to ask questions and to be curious. It requires humility to say, for any of us, I got that wrong.
Right.
And so you would think when this new information has been presented that the CDC is saying the cloth masks don't work. And oh, by the way, if you look at the information on N95s, they're not any better.
No, they weren't
they're
made,
different, but they're not better.
They weren't made for that.
That's right. They weren't made for this. The vaccines do not prevent transmission. So we have this information from the CDC's own mouth.
Right. After 2 years.
After 2 years. And yet these are the people that our pastors are still clinging on to for dear life. And in some cases are still using that language. And it's provably false.
Yes.
And they will not say, we were wrong. Instead, they would trust in a man who masterminded a project, who involved churches all across the country, that base their foundation on sand.
But think about though what it took for the government to say, okay, Collins, your job is to go convince the evangelicals to do what we want them to do. They're going to be difficult, so you go do it. Can you get these guys together and do it? The conversation had to be something like that,
right?
Because he probably just didn't, say, hey, I'll do this. Somebody thought this is going to be one of the pushbacks is, and you go do it.
Which leads to, I think this is a great way to wrap it up, because it leads you to believe that there is more of a coordinated effort to this whole pandemic and this whole approach. And in this article, it talks about how Rick Warren says he first met Collins when they were both speakers for the billionaires and heads of state who gather annually in Davos, Switzerland for the World Economic Forum. Okay, if you aren't familiar with the World Economic Forum, it is the Great Reset. They have an entire webpage, if you go to worldeconomicforum.com, about the Great Reset, that COVID gives the world a chance to reset the global economy, the way we move forward into a much more sustainable universe. Okay, they met in Davos. Okay, that's where this whole thing came together. Of we have to convince the people this is our message. And if you look, it's around the world. And it is a very coordinated, calculated effort. And a lot of our pastors
these things
fed right into it.
Really make people's eyes open to there's really a plan.
There is a plan.
Let's get the right people. Because I don't remember ever, with all the things I've seen about the Great Reset or the World Economic Forum, I don't remember the page that says, hey, when we're doing all this, let's make 100% sure that we make sure the gospel of Jesus Christ is part of this. So let's call Rick. I missed that.
Yeah.
So he wasn't there for that.
No.
And they didn't invite him there because they wanted to hear it. So he was there for a reason too.
Makes me physically sick.
Oh my goodness gracious. So we're going to have that next?
That's what we're going to talk about next week.
Great Reset will be part of the next show. Any last words from y'all? Well, thank you to you for watching our program. Like I said earlier in the show, you can check us out on all the different places you find your podcast. Please give us a good rating, and we'll be back next week. We can't wait to see you.